in 2012, a law was promulgated in Ghana. The essence of that law was to protect your privacy as an individual, as well as my privacy. Now, that law, among other things, requires that all media houses who are media or data controllers register. Sadly, in Ghana today, there is only one media house that has done that. Today, we are talking about the Data Protection Commission and what it means to have a data protection law. My guest in the studio is the Executive Director of the Data Protection Commission, and her name is Mrs. Teki Akutteh Falconar. Welcome to the studio, ma'am.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm good, and you?
I'm doing great myself. Okay. Now, tell us quickly about the commission. What is the Data Protection Commission?
Well, the Data Protection Commission is essentially a regulator that was established under the Data Protection Act 2012, Act 843, which is essentially a law that puts in place processes by which those who hold personal information can take to actually further guarantee the right to privacy, which is enshrined and articulating too.
Now, sorry to butt in, but when you say personal information, what exactly do you mean?
Any information about a living person. So information about me, it could include my name, my number, it may be an email address, it may be information that you can make me out of. So it may be maybe a letter that mentions me, you know, in it. Any information about an individual from which an individual can be inferred is personal information, which is what the law seeks to protect.
Why is this necessary?
It's necessary, and I think it's long overdue, but it's even more important now, especially since as a country, over the last couple of decades, we've been working, you know, strenuously on creating an enabling environment for IT. As you are very aware, it's very easy now to collect, use, and process personal information today than it was about 10, 20 years ago. And so it's become even easier to actually breach this fundamental right to privacy, which is guaranteed to any Ghanaian that is living in this country. So that's the more reason why a law like this is important, to make sure that at a time like this where we are collecting personal information on an unprecedented level, we become more responsible in how we deal with such information.
Now, today in Ghana, not just Ghana, but across the world, you have banks collecting personal information, you have the police, security agencies, you have media houses collecting personal information. Who is required under the law to register?
Anyone who collects personal information. Under the law, the terminology that is used is anybody who processes personal information. But when the law talks about processing, it's anything you can do with personal information, from using the information, from looking at the information to deleting it. So anybody at all who collects personal information, you can talk about the media houses, for instance, you can talk about financial sector, you can talk about those that fall within the insurance sector, you can talk about regulatory bodies, you can talk about the government and the government system, so the executive, the judiciary, parliament. You know, when you talk about the executive, you're talking about ministries and agencies that fall under them. You can talk about schools and educational systems that process personal information. And then there are even some individuals that collect large amounts of personal information, you know, but they are professionals, they are like consultants that are working in a particular capacity, like accountants, for instance, auditors, and the rest that also collect. They are also required to register under this, lawyers, you know, for instance. So anyone at all that collects and holds any kind of personal information is mandated under the law to register.
And what does it take to register?
Well, the registration process, if you go under the laws, there is a principle for transparency. It's one of the key issues. It's one of the key issues for data protection. There's an issue on transparency, and so the registration is part of the process to further strengthen individuals, you know, and then give them that authority over who is controlling their information. So the registration process essentially mandates us as a regulator to put that information of those who are registered public. So currently, when you visit our website, you would see all the agencies, both public and private, or individuals that are actually registered with the Commission. The idea is that as an individual that is dealing with data controllers, you want to be sure that the data controller that you're dealing with is going to handle your information in a responsible way in accordance with the law, so that they can guarantee that right to privacy which you have under the Constitution. So we are supposed to register, one, to be aware of those out there that are collecting, two, to be able to better monitor them to make sure that they are complying with the law, and then three, to make that information public.
Okay.
So that anybody or any individual whose information they are collecting will know that this person is actually taking steps or has taken steps to comply with the data protection laws.
I'm thinking about this within the context of our security agencies.
Yes.
Sometimes they need to covertly collect information on individuals.
Yes.
But then again, you have just said that when they register, you sometimes make some of these things public so that individuals are able to know who is collecting what. Doesn't that sort of defeat defeat the purpose for which many of these security agencies would like to quietly collect information on individuals?
No. If you go to other jurisdictions that, for instance, practice this, you will be able to see security agencies that are actually registered. When you register, you don't tell us whose information you are holding. You only give us general basic information about the kind of personal information you hold. So you will probably, generally is information that is public anyway. So we know that, for instance, our police services collect information for security purposes. We also know that they may process information for administrative purposes. So when they are registering with that, that is the information that they give us. That's what they tell us, and that's what the entire public knows. Of course, in terms of their practice, you know, it is important to actually know that putting in place prudent data protection practices actually help you do your work better, whether you're a security agency, whether you're a media organization or a business. You know, as an example, a business, for instance, you're better able to promote your brand because good data protection practice is associated with a good brand. So for a business, for instance, putting out there that I am taking steps to make sure that whatever is required of me to protect your information as a customer, I'm doing it, also puts you in a good light. It's the same thing when you look at the security agencies. I mean, lately we've had a lot of bash at the security agencies, but data protection promotes transparency. It's not every information that must be made public, but if you are a security agency and you put in place adequate data protection practices, you are able to better ensure that your officers and those working within your organization, for instance, do the right thing, because they can't just go and take information anyhow. You know, now there are structured processes in accordance with a certain law that must be complied with. And so by putting in place some of these measures, you know, you are even able to do your work in a more efficient and coherent manner, you know, other than anybody just do, because you don't train your staff to actually know and believe that, look, I have to protect the information. Even if it's information on investigation, it's not everybody who must have access to that information, for instance, for the purpose for which. So you then institute prudent data management practices that also helps promote efficiency within your organization.
Okay. Now we have established who a data controller is.
Yes.
Now, I need to understand, and also our viewers,
Yes.
once you become a data controller,
Yes.
are there benchmarks for which you need to, by which you must manage people's personal information? And what are these benchmarks?
Well, we in data protection call it principles, and I must state that these principles are the same across board all over the world, because there's a certain standard that must be maintained once you're protecting personal information. One of it is that you must process the information in a lawful manner. And anytime you're protecting the information, you must make sure that you are accountable to the laws. So you know there are laws that bind how I perform this particular activity of using personal information.
Okay.
So I undertake, to respect those laws and to be bound by those laws. Then you do the processing lawfully. The fact that you have information, the fact that you can take personal information does not mean that you just go out and take information and use it anyhow. So we have a principle that, for instance, says that you have to use the information properly.
Okay.
Also, the fact that you're collecting information is money. Information today is money, and personal information is even more important, to me. If you're holding information about my finances, you're holding information about me that I don't want to share with the rest of the world, that information must be protected.
Okay.
So one of the principles says that you must put in adequate safeguards to make sure that you're actually protecting the information so it doesn't get into the hands of somebody who I have decided not to give that information to.
Interesting one on the need for adequate safeguards. Now hold your thoughts there. We'll go for a short break. When we come back, you will continue with the principles that underpin data protection.
Okay.
And then also we'll get into some of the critical agencies that have failed to register as data controllers.
Okay.
We will be right back.
Okay.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. All right, so if you've just joined me, I have been speaking to the Executive Director of the Data Protection Commission, that is Mrs. Teki Akutteh Falconar. We have been talking about data protection and why it is necessary for data controllers to get registered and handle data the right way. Before the break, she was telling us about the principles that underpin proper and prudent data management. And so let's get on with the principles.
Okay. So another of it is saying that I had earlier mentioned that this whole data protection is about the individual. So you have to involve the individual as long as you continue to hold their information and process their information. Also in aid of the transparency. How do you involve them? You involve their participating by ensuring that at any point in time they have access to you. You know, because the law gives them rights to come to you and then ask, what information, for instance, are you holding on me? Take this information out because I'm not comfortable with it or because I don't like it. And so they have rights to come back to you at any point in time. So you need to keep a window or a door, you know, that allows individuals to actually come in and then access the information that you are holding on them.
Does this cut across all kinds of information? Because then again, I'm thinking about security agencies. If they hold some information on you, for instance, can you walk up to them and ask them what kind of information you have on me?
It cuts across all sectors. However, it does the fact that the issue is about creating an open door that allows them to come to you, you know, but it does not necessarily mean that you have to give the information to them. And the law gives you a window to justify why you cannot give them the information they require. So in the example you're given, if for instance your security agencies and the peculiar nature of your work makes it difficult to disclose such information, you are actually given that power under the law not to disclose. However, that door must be open, and when they walk in it, you will then give them the reason that I cannot, you know, give you the information because of A, B, C, and D. So that door must be provided.
Okay.
You know, it's the right of that individual, and it must be provided. Also, you must make sure that anytime you're collecting information, one of the principles says that, look, you must state the purpose for which you're collecting the information. So you don't walk up to me and then just take information. All these things that I'm saying, of course, there are exemptions, like security, like sometimes information for journalistic purposes. However, the general concept is that, look, provide information to individuals. Once you're collecting their information, let them know what you're taking the information for, what use you're going to put to it, how long you're going to keep it for, you know. And once you do that, anytime you have to use the information, use it within the reasons that you took it the first time. So if, for instance, I walk in here and then I ask your name because I wanted to come on this show, and so you provided your name and details to me on the basis of this coming or participation in this program, I cannot go back later on and then use your name for any other purpose.
Okay.
Because the purpose for which you gave me the information, or which I gave you, you know, which allowed you to give me the information, is that I'm coming on your show, and so I need it to be able to, you know, interact with you.
So, for instance, I cannot reproduce portions of this interview in a biography of you and then sell that in the public.
As long as you make me aware.
Assuming I don't make you aware.
If you don't make me aware, you will be in breach, because the main purpose for this video is for this particular program.
Okay. Now, I mean, all these appear to be quite novel for many of us who have been in the business of handling people's personal information for a very long time.
Yes.
Now, at the commencement of this interview, I mentioned that media houses are expected to register.
Yes.
Now, tell us a bit about institutions, critical institutions that are also expected to register, and why probably that is necessary?
Well, we are in a critical time now, an election year, so and we just issued out guidelines for political parties. So I must say that one of the key institutions that must register are political parties, for instance, because they also double in holding, you know, and processing information. Apart from that, you're looking at IT companies, especially those ones that are in the area of business process outsourcing, and they are handling large amounts of personal information. They must also register. The financial sector, that is also very critical because they hold critical information. And then, of course, the communication sector, you know, the telcos, the other service providers within the telco sector that also process large amounts of personal information. Then we have marketing companies that actually send direct marketing information to individuals. They are also a critical base. And last but not the least, I think it's very important that all public sectors, you know, public sectors, government agencies, and the rest take a critical look at data protection and start, because so those are the people that we are actually looking at, you know, ensuring compliance.
Okay. Now, in the registration process,
yes,
can you run us through what does one require to register? And if you fail to register, are there sanctions? What are some of the sanctions? Will my CEO, Talal Fatal, get imprisoned for failing to register his media organization as a data controller?
Yes.
He will get arrested?
Yes, because failure to register attracts an imprisonment term of not less than 2 years or a fine or both. So failure to register is a criminal offense and it attracts a criminal sanction. The registration process itself is very simplified because we actually acknowledge that data protection is still very new to this country. So even when you're going through the registration process, you actually learn. You have a better understanding of what kind of information I'm holding as an organization. And luckily, we've streamlined this process, we've simplified it, and it's an online process. So it doesn't matter where you are in this country. Once you have access to the internet, you can visit our website and then start the registration process. We will take critical information that we'll take on you will be who you are, if you're an organization, you know, whether you're a limited liability or otherwise. We'll take information on your tax identification number because we need to authenticate to make sure that you are really who you tell us you are. So you need to provide us with a tax identification number, and then you will also have to tell us whose information you are holding. So if you're holding information on employees, on, you know, on other forms of visitors to your premises, you're holding information on security that is coming from your CCTVs and the rest, you tell us. And another critical thing is to tell us about how you're actually protecting that information. You know, under the requirements of the law, if this security measures information that you give to us is not adequate, you know, we will refuse your registration until you put in place adequate security measures to protect the information that you are holding.
And so once the company Metro TV registers,
yes,
does it cover all of Metro TV's journalists, or would the journalists be required to register as individual data controllers?
If you're a journalist, for instance, you're a freelance journalist, so you're not an employee of Metro TV, then in that case you will have to register as a freelance journalist. And it's important for Metro TV to ensure that that freelance journalist registers so that is equally held responsible in that same manner. But for employees, once Metro TV registers, it's taken that Metro TV will take the steps to ensure that they become data processors, not necessarily data controllers. So they will take steps to ensure that their staff, which will be these journalists, actually comply.
Okay. Now, is there any precedence here in Ghana of the commission taking on any institution that has failed to register?
No, we haven't done that yet. We will start our enforcement activities sometime before the end of the year. The reason we haven't taken any of these steps is that we keep getting feedback from the public and from organizations and institutions that this area is still very new to them and they need to have a better understanding. And so for now, over the last couple of years, our focus has been on awareness creation, you know, and we're hoping that by the end of this year, we would be in a better stead to now start enforcement activities, you know.
Okay. All right, so we heard it from the Executive Director of the Data Protection Commission. Where are your offices located?
Currently, we are within the Ministry of Communications building, room 51 on the first floor.
Okay.
Yes.
And I believe that the registration process can also be done online.
Online, yes. You can visit our website at www.dataprotection.org.gh.
Okay.
www.dataprotection.org.gh. And the thing about visiting our website, we have loads of information that you can find there. So to know more about data protection is also a good resource to actually visit the website and then learn more apart from the registration challenges.
In terms of the breaches, many always get worried when it comes to people's personal data vis-a-vis government and government's long arms that it finds itself everywhere and anywhere. How then do you protect people's personal data against government, seeing that you're also to some extent an agency of the government?
Well, we are an agency of law. We were set up by the law. We are accountable to the laws that set us up. And that is why, even if you visit our website now, you find out that several government agencies have actually registered, you know, and are taking the process. Our position is that this law actually impedes on the fundamental rights of every Ghanaian. So our job is to actually uphold the Constitution and not any individual. And so what we are doing is to make sure that anyone, you know, takes steps to actually comply. Now, we have to protect the individual, especially in the area of compliance, you know, to make sure that these people are holding and processing the information rightly. So that is just what we are doing. We're still requiring government agencies to register, you know, in accordance with the law. If they do not, we will still take necessary sanctions as provided under the law to actually enforce the tenets of the law. And I must state that it's very important, you know, that as a country, we stop looking at public institutions, or those of us who work within the public sector, we stop seeing the public sector as a place that exists above the laws of this country. Because our mandate and our jobs are essentially to uphold the laws of this country, you know, and to uphold the Constitution. And so any institution that is given that mandate, I believe their job, first of all, is to ensure that, and that's what we are trying to do as a commission.
All right, so interesting conversation going on right here in the studio of Metro TV. Unfortunately, many of us, I can't say for Metro TV, I don't know whether we've registered or not, but many media institutions have not registered and so are in breach of this particular law. And Madam Falconar has told us that enforcement will begin towards the end of this year. What form is it going to take?
Well, we'll look at a number of, you know, for failing to, the law says that if you're not registered, one, you shouldn't process personal information. Yeah. So we can take enforcement actions, for instance, to say that as an organization, stop running your operations, because a lot of the time they use personal information throughout all their processes until you are compliant. That's one thing that the commission can do. We can also go to court and then enforce the criminal sanction aspect, you know, which says that once you are processing personal information and you haven't registered, it's illegal, and so we'll take criminal sanctions against you.
Do you have the manpower to police, for instance, even just the media space?
Yes.
Okay. And once someone registers, is there any physical evidence to indicate that this organization has registered as a data controller?
Yes, like I said, there's an obligation on us to make aspects of the register public. So currently, the 400 plus data controllers that are registered, that information is publicly available on our website.
Now, beyond that, is there, for instance, a certificate, a plaque, or something displayed at the...
We issue certificates once we approve your registration process. So a certificate is issued. But apart from, once the certificate is issued, that information is made public, and the public would even see your data protection registration certificate number when they visit our website.
Thank you very much. I have been speaking to Mrs. Teki Akutteh Falconar. She is the Executive Director of the Data Protection Commission, and we have been speaking about the need for people's privacy to be respected and why we must register as data controllers. This is still Good Morning Ghana. We'll go for a short break. When we come back, the show will get towards the end.